We don't keep defects." Those were the last words Elder Voss said before they shoved Nessa into the snow. She'd tried to stand, tried to argue that being wolfless didn't make her defective, that the baby inside her deserved a chance, but the elders had no interest in her appeal. One of them shoved her hard into the frozen ground, the impact knocking the breath out of her. She fell on something sharp jutting from the snow. When she pressed her hands to her ribs, it came away red. Blood seeped through her thin dress, spreading a dark bloom across the white. Corin stepped closer, his face pale in the fading light. His eyes didn't soften. His voice was quiet and cold, making her shiver in a different way. "You were a mistake, and so is what you're carrying." He turned away without another word, leaving her lying in the snow, trembling, the cold biting through her dress. The cold stopped hurting after the first hour. That was the thing nobody told you about dying, how your body just gave up fighting eventually, how the shivering stopped, and the pain faded, and everything went soft and distant, like you were watching yourself from somewhere far away. Nessa pressed her hand against the wound in her side. Her fingers came away red, stark, and vivid. The blood looked almost black in the twilight. She should get up. Should keep moving. But her legs wouldn't cooperate anymore, and the baby... God, the baby was so quiet. Too quiet. Her other hand went to her stomach, round and hard beneath her torn dress, 6 months along. She'd managed to hide it for 4, wearing loose clothes, avoiding pack gatherings, pretending everything was fine. But bodies had a way of revealing secrets eventually. "Please," she whispered to the child inside her. "Please still be there." No kick answered, no flutter of movement. Just the terrible, heavy silence of her own heartbeat slowing in her ears. This morning, she'd woken up thinking today might be different. Thinking maybe the elders would listen to her appeal, would see that she'd done nothing wrong except love someone who couldn't love her back. That being pregnant and unmated wasn't a crime worthy of exile. She'd been so stupid. Corin had been there in the hall, watching from the back. The man who'd sworn he loved her right up until she told him she was carrying his child. Then his face had gone blank, and he'd said, "Get rid of it," like she was discussing a broken chair instead of their baby. When she refused, he told the elders she'd tried to trap him. They'd believed him instantly. Of course they had. He was Pack. She was just the human the Pack had tolerated because her mother had been Pack before the sickness took her wolf. She'd been walking for hours after that, trying to reach the road, trying to find help. But the snow was deep and her body was failing. And now she was here, dying against a tree trunk, watching the sky fade from gray to black. At least it would be quick. At least the baby wouldn't suffer long. The wolf appeared so suddenly she thought she was hallucinating. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe. It will truly make my day. Now back to our story. The wolf was massive, easily twice the size of any she'd seen before. Its fur was dark as midnight, eyes burning gold in the fading light. It moved toward her with predatory grace, and Nessa's first thought was that at least this would be faster than freezing. She closed her eyes and waited for teeth. Instead, she heard the sound of bones cracking, reshaping. The air filled with the sharp scent of magic. When she opened her eyes again, a man crouched where the wolf had been. He was bare-chested despite the cold, steam rising from his skin. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, and those same gold eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Or maybe that was just the dying. "You're on my land," he said. His voice was deep, rough, carrying an authority that made her wolfless body want to submit anyway. "Sorry," Nessa managed. The word came out slurred. "Didn't mean to bleed on your territory." He moved closer, and she saw his face properly now. Strong features, a scar cutting through one eyebrow. The kind of face that belonged on someone used to violence. His eyes swept over her, taking in the blood, the torn dress, her swollen belly. and something dark flashed across his expression. "Who did this to you? Does it matter?" Her hand pressed harder against her side, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. "I'm dying anyway." "Not on my land, you're not." He was beside her suddenly, his hands surprisingly gentle as he examined her wounds. His touch was warm, so warm it almost hurt. "How far along?" 6 months. Nessa tried to focus on his face, but her vision was blurring. Is the baby still alive? I can hear the heartbeat." His jaw tightened. "Faint, but there." Relief hit her so hard she sobbed. Just once, before she could stop herself. The man's eyes met hers, and something in them shifted. "I'm going to pick you up now. It's going to hurt." He was right. The moment he lifted her, pain exploded through her side, white hot and absolute. Nessa bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to scream. She'd already lost enough dignity today. "You can scream," he said, his voice closer now, his arms solid beneath her. "No one's here to judge you for it." "Who are you?" The words came out barely a whisper. He started walking, his stride steady despite her weight and the deepening snow. Troy Blackwater. Oh God, she'd bled out on the Alpha King's land. The one they told stories about in her pack. The wolf who'd killed 3 challengers in a single night, who ruled with absolute authority, who trusted no one and showed mercy to fewer. "I'm sorry," Nessa said again. "I didn't know. I'll leave as soon as—" "You're not leaving. You're barely conscious." His arms tightened slightly. "Save your strength. We have a long walk ahead." "Why? Are you helping me?" Troy was quiet, his boots crunching through snow, his breath steady despite carrying her weight. Finally, "I don't know yet." That was the last thing Nessa heard before the darkness pulled her under completely. She woke to warmth. Not the false warmth of dying, but real heat. A fire crackling somewhere close, blankets heavy on her body, the softness of an actual bed beneath her. For a moment, Nessa thought she'd dreamed it all. The exile, the snow, the Alpha King appearing like something out of a fairy tale. Then she tried to sit up, and pain lanced through her side, sharp enough to make her gasp. "Don't move," a woman's voice, shom, but not unkind. "You'll tear the stitches." Nessa turned her head carefully and found an elderly woman sitting beside the bed, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, healer's marks tattooed on her wrists. "My baby," Nessa croaked. "Please." "Alive. Stubborn little thing, like its mother, apparently." The healer's expression softened slightly. "You lost a lot of blood. Another hour in that snow and we'd have lost you both. As it is, you're going to be bedridden for at least a week, maybe 2. Relief made Nessa's eyes sting. She pressed her hand to her stomach and felt the small, fluttering kick against her palm. Still there, still fighting. "Where am I?" "Blackwater Castle. The King's personal chambers, actually. He refused to put you anywhere else." The healer stood, checking the IV line running into Nessa's arm. "I'm Marin. I've been here for 20 years, and I've never seen him bring someone back from the dead quite so literally. You must have made an impression." "I was dying on his land. He probably didn't want the bad luck." Marin's lips twitched. "The King doesn't believe in luck, only choices." She moved toward the door, then paused. "He's been here, checking on you every few hours. Hasn't slept much since he brought you in 2 days ago." 2 days. Nessa had been unconscious for 2 days. Why would he do that? The question slipped out before she could stop it. "That," Marin said, "is what everyone in this castle is trying to figure out." After the healer left, Nessa lay still and tried to process what had happened. It didn't make sense. Kings didn't save pregnant wolfless women. They especially didn't give them their own beds. Unless he wanted something? Everyone always wanted something. The door opened again, and Nessa tensed. But it was Troy who entered, fully dressed now in dark clothes, that did nothing to hide the power in his frame. He stopped just inside the doorway, those gold eyes finding her immediately. "You're awake." "Thank you. For saving me. For this." Nessa kept her voice neutral, careful. She gestured vaguely at the room, the bed. "I'll leave as soon as I can walk." Something flickered across his face. Where would you go? It was the same question she'd been asking herself for 2 days while unconscious. Where could she go? No pack? No family? No money? Why, months pregnant and healing from wounds that should have killed her. "I'll figure something out." That's not an answer. "It's the only one I have." Nessa met his eyes, trying to look braver than she felt. "You saved my life. That's more than enough. I won't impose on your hospitality any longer than necessary." Troy moved further into the room, pulling a chair close to the bed and sitting down with the kind of fluid grace that reminded her he was far more than human. "Marin says you need at least 2 weeks of bed rest. Probably more. The wounds were deep. If you push too hard too fast, you'll hemorrhage again. Then I'll rest for 2 weeks and leave." "And go where?" His voice was level, but she heard the steel beneath it. "Back to the pack that left you to die?" Nessa's hands fisted in the blankets. "That's not your concern. You're in my castle. That makes it my concern. I didn't ask to be in your castle. No, you asked to die in my territory instead." Troy leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Let me be very clear about something. I don't do charity. I don't save people out of the goodness of my heart. But I also don't leave pregnant women to bleed out in the snow, and I sure as hell don't send them back to the people who tried to kill them." "So what do you want from me?" The question came out sharper than intended. "What's the price for all this kindness?" His eyes narrowed. "You think I want payment? Everyone wants something." Nessa's voice cracked despite her efforts to keep it steady. "Nobody helps without expecting something in return. So just tell me what it is, what you want, so I know what I'm agreeing to." For a long moment, Troy just looked at her. Then he stood, and Nessa braced herself for anger, for demands, for the truth of what this rescue would cost her. Instead, he moved to the door. "I want you to rest, to heal, to let your child have a chance at life." He paused, his hand on the doorframe. "That's what I want, nothing more." "I don't believe you." "Then don't." He glanced back at her, something almost like sadness in his eyes. "But stay, or anyway. At least until you have somewhere else to go." He left before she could respond. Nessa lay back against the pillows, her hand on her stomach, and tried to ignore the way her chest ached with something that wasn't physical pain. She'd learned young that kindness without cost was a fairy tale, that people only helped when it benefited them. But Troy had carried her through the snow, had given her his bed, had checked on her for 2 days while she was unconscious, and couldn't possibly do anything for him in return. Maybe, a small voice whispered, maybe he was telling the truth. Or maybe she was just desperate enough to want to believe it. The next 3 days followed a pattern. Marin came morning and evening to check her wounds, change her bandages, monitor the baby's heartbeat. Servants brought food, real food, more than Nessa had seen in months, and tried not to stare at. The pregnant, wolfless woman in the king's chambers. And Troy visited. Every evening, just after sunset, he'd appear in the doorway and ask how she was feeling. The conversations were brief, formal, carefully distant. He never stayed more than a few minutes. But he came. Every day. Like clockwork. On the 4th day, Nessa was finally allowed to sit up properly. Marin helped her into a clean nightgown, soft fabric that didn't scratch her healing wounds, and propped pillows behind her back. "You're healing faster than expected," the healer said, checking the stitches in her side. "The baby's heartbeat is stronger too. Whatever you did to survive that night, it worked." "I didn't do anything. I was dying." "You were fighting." Marin's eyes met hers. "There's a difference. Most people give up when it gets that bad. You didn't." Nessa thought about that after the healer left. Had she been fighting? She was still thinking about it when Troy arrived for his evening visit. But this time, instead of staying in the doorway, he actually entered the room, carried a chair closer to the bed, sat down like he intended to stay. "You look better," he said. "I look like someone who's been bedridden for 4 days. Better than someone who's been dead for 4 days." A pause. "Marin says you can have visitors now, if you want them." Nessa's laugh was bitter. "I don't have anyone who'd visit." "No family at all?" "My mother died when I was 12. Father wasn't Pack, just a human she met before she knew better. He left before I was born." The old pain was dull now, worn smooth by time. "It was just me and her. Then it was just me." Troy's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "And the father of your child?" There it was, the question she'd been dreading. "His name is Corin." Nessa's hand moved to her stomach instinctively, protective. "We were together for 2 years. I thought he loved me." She laughed at her own stupidity. "I actually believed that someone could want me despite being wolfless." "What happened?" "I got pregnant." The words came out flat. "We'd been careful, but nothing's perfect. When I told him, he said to get rid of it. When I refused, he told the elders I'd tried to trap him, that I'd lied about my birth control to force him into mating." Her voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. "They believed him. Of course they believed him. He's Pack. I'm just the human stain they tolerated, because my mother had been one of them once." Troy was very still. "He's the one who hurt you, who left you to die." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Nessa met his eyes. "He wanted to make sure I understood that I meant nothing, that the baby meant nothing, that we were just waste to be disposed of." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. When Troy spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "What Pack?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Gold bled into his eyes. "What Pack, Nessa?" She hadn't realized he knew her name, hadn't heard him say it before. The sound of it in his voice made something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. "Rivermore," she said quietly. "About 60 miles south of here." Troy stood abruptly and moved to the window, his back to her. His hands gripped the windowsill hard enough that she heard the wood creak. For a long moment, he didn't speak. "I'm sorry," Nessa said, unsure what she was apologizing for. For telling him, for making him angry, for existing. "Don't." The word came out sharp. Troy turned back to her, and his eyes were still more wolf than human. "Don't apologize for what they did to you." "I'm not trying to. Nessa struggled to find words. "I don't want to cause problems. I know having me here is probably complicated. I know people are talking." "Then let them talk. Do you know what they call me?" Troy moved back to the chair, sat down with controlled precision. "The Ice King, the ruthless one. The wolf who killed 3 alphas in a single night because they challenged my authority." He leaned forward. "I've spent 8 years making sure everyone in these territories knows exactly how dangerous I am. Do you think I care what they say about a woman I chose to save?" "Why did you save me?" The question had been burning in her chest for days. "Really, you don't know me. I'm wolfless, pregnant and broken. Why go out of your way?" Troy's jaw worked like he was choosing his words carefully. "When I found you in the snow, you were dying. But you had your hand on your stomach, protecting the baby even though you were barely conscious, even though you had to know it was hopeless." He met her eyes. "I've seen a lot of wolves give up when things get hard. I've seen alphas abandon their packs, warriors desert their units, parents walk away from their children. But you were dying, and you were still trying to shield a child that the world seemed to think was worthless. The baby isn't worthless, Nessa said fiercely. I know. Something that resembled respect flickered in his eyes. That's why I carried you home. The silence that followed felt different, heavier, like something had shifted between them that neither quite knew how to name. I loved him, Nessa said quietly. Corin, I really did. For 2 years I thought I'd found someone who saw past the wolfless thing, who wanted me anyway. She swallowed hard. Finding out I was wrong, finding out it was all just him slumming with the damaged girl until it got inconvenient, it broke something in me. You don't seem broken. I'm barely holding together. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. I'm 6 months pregnant, alone, with no prospects and no future. The only reason I'm alive is because you happened to be in the right place at the right time. If you hadn't found me, but I did find you. By accident. Maybe. Troy's eyes held hers. Or maybe you were meant to survive. To give that baby a chance to. He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. To what? Nothing, it's late. You should rest. He stood, and Nessa felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Their conversations were becoming the only part of her day she looked forward to. Troy. His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way that made her nervous. Thank you for telling me about why you saved me. It helps, knowing it wasn't just pity. I don't do pity. He moved toward the door, then paused. Tomorrow, if you're feeling well enough, I could bring some books. Marin says you'll be bedridden for at least another week. Thought you might want something to do besides stare at the ceiling. Warmth bloomed in Nessa's chest. I'd like that. After he left, she lay in the darkness and tried not to think about how Troy's voice had sounded when he said her name. How his eyes had burned gold with fury at what Corin had done. How, for the first time in months, she'd told someone about the worst thing that had ever happened to her, and they'd been angry on her behalf instead of telling her she should have known better. The books arrived the next morning, a stack of them, carried in by a servant who looked equal parts confused and disapproving. Nessa didn't care. She dove into them gratefully, losing herself in stories of places she'd never see and people who didn't exist. Troy came that evening as promised. This time he brought a chessboard. Do you play? He asked, setting it up on a small table beside the bed. My mother taught me. I'm terrible at it. Good. I hate playing people who let me win. He settled into the chair, moving pieces with practiced efficiency. White or black? Black. I like starting at a disadvantage. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Of course you do. They played in comfortable silence. Nessa lost spectacularly within 15 moves. You weren't kidding about being terrible, Troy said, studying the board. I warned you. Nessa leaned back against the pillows, oddly content despite the loss. Another game? If you want to be humiliated again. I'm used to humiliation at this point. Something dark flashed across his face. You shouldn't be. They played again. This time Nessa lasted 20 moves before Troy's queen cornered her king. But it was nice, having something to focus on besides her wounds and her uncertain future. Having someone treat her like she was worth spending time with, even if she was terrible at chess. Tell me something, Troy said as he reset the board for a third game. What did you want? Before all this, before Corin, before the pack, before everything went wrong. What was the thing you wanted most? Nessa thought about it. A garden, she said finally. Something small and manageable, where I could grow things, vegetables maybe, some flowers. Just something that was mine, that I built with my own hands. That's a very specific dream. My mother used to garden, before she got sick. I remember helping her when I was little, my hands in the dirt, the smell of growing things. It felt like magic. Nessa smiled at the memory. After she died, the relatives who took me in didn't care about gardens, so I held on to that dream. Thought maybe someday, if I could save enough money, I could have a little plot of land somewhere. Make something grow. Troy moved his knight, capturing one of her pawns. You could have that here, if you wanted. Here? The castle has extensive grounds, more gardens than the staff can properly maintain. He didn't look at her, his attention seemingly fixed on the board. You'd have to wait until you're healed, and until after the baby comes. But if you're still here then, there's space. Nessa's heart did something complicated in her chest. You're offering me a garden? I'm offering you something to do, something to build. Finally, he met her eyes. If you stay long enough. The implication hung between them. If she stayed. Not when she left, but if. I can't stay here indefinitely, Nessa said softly. I don't belong in a castle. In your world. I'm just a pregnant woman you took pity on. Stop saying that, Troy's voice was sharp. Stop acting like you're nothing. Like the only reason you're here is because I felt sorry for you. Why am I here? Because, he stopped, jaws clenching. Because when I carried you through that snow, something in me decided you were mine to protect. And I don't let go of what's mine. The words should have scared her, should have felt possessive, overwhelming, too much. Instead, they made her feel safe for the first time in months. I don't understand you, Nessa whispered. I don't understand myself. Troy stood abruptly, moving to the window like he needed distance. I've spent 8 years keeping everyone at arm's length, not letting anyone close enough to matter. It's easier that way, safer. Then why? I don't know. He turned back to her, and there was something raw in his eyes. I don't know why you're different. Why I keep coming back to this room. Why the thought of you leaving makes something in my chest tight. His hands fisted at his sides. You should be just a stranger I saved. But you're not. And I don't know what to do with that. Nessa's breath caught. Troy, get some rest. You need to heal. He was at the door before she could respond. I'll see you tomorrow. Then he was gone, leaving Nessa alone with a half-finished chess game and a heart that wouldn't stop racing. She lay back and pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling the baby kick against her palm. Your mother, she told the child inside her, is in so much trouble. Because she was starting to feel it too. That pull toward Troy. That warmth when he entered the room. That disappointment when he left. She'd told herself it was gratitude. A natural response to someone who'd saved her life. But gratitude didn't make your heart skip when someone said your name. Didn't make you count the hours until their next visit. Didn't make you lie awake wondering what they were thinking. Nessa had been heartbroken over Corin. Had thought she'd loved him. Had grieved when he revealed his true colors. But this, whatever this was with Troy, felt different. Felt bigger. Felt terrifying in a way that made her want to run and stay in equal measure. She was pregnant with another man's child. Wolfless. Homeless. Everything about her screamed complication. And Troy was a king who could have anyone. Who didn't need the mess she brought with her. But he kept coming back. Kept saying things that made her chest ache with hope she had no right to feel. We're in so much trouble, Nessa whispered again to the baby, to the universe that had somehow led her from dying and in the snow to this, to a king's chambers and a half-finished chess game, and feelings she had no idea how to handle. Tomorrow she'd be sensible. Tomorrow she'd remember all the reasons this was impossible. But tonight she let herself imagine what it might be like if Troy meant what he said. If she really was his to protect. If staying wasn't just temporary but something more. It was a dangerous fantasy. But after months of having nothing, of being nothing, maybe she deserved one dangerous fantasy, even if it could never be real. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange sort of limbo. Nessa's body healed, slowly, painfully, but steadily. The stitches came out. She could sit up without feeling like her ribs were tearing apart. She could walk to the bathroom without Marin hovering anxiously nearby, and Troy kept coming. Every evening, like clockwork, they started a conversation about the books she was reading, about court politics he found exhausting, about the cook's latest attempt at something called honey-glazed duck. Nessa learned that Troy hated mornings, that he'd killed his first deer at age 7, that his father had been a brutal man who believed kindness was weakness. She learned about the 3 alphas who'd challenged him on the same night, how he'd killed them not because he wanted to, but because showing mercy would have made him look weak, and weakness invited more challenges. "I was 23, Troy said one evening, staring at the chessboard without really seeing it. "Just inherited the throne 6 months earlier. My father had barely been in the ground before wolves started circling, testing me. The 3 who challenged me that night, they thought I'd be easy, young, inexperienced." "What happened?" Nessa moved her bishop. "I proved them wrong." His voice was flat. "Made sure everyone watching understood exactly what it cost to challenge me. By the time the 3rd one died, there was so much blood on the floor the servants spent days scrubbing it out." Nessa should have been horrified sitting across from a monster. Instead, she saw a young man who'd been forced to become something he didn't want to be just to survive. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Troy's eyes met hers. "Every day. But I'd do it again. Because if I'd shown mercy, shown weakness, there would have been 10 more challenges. 20. Until someone finally succeeded in killing me." He moved his knight. "Sometimes you have to become the monster to keep the real monsters at bay." Nessa thought about that. About the choices people made to survive. About the things you did when the alternative was death. "I almost gave the baby up," she said suddenly. The words came out before she could stop them. "When Corin first told me to get rid of it, I thought, maybe he's right. Maybe I can't do this. Can't raise a child alone, wolfless, with nothing to my name." Troy's hand stilled on his chess piece. He didn't speak, just waited. "I went to the healer," Nessa continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Asked about options. She gave me herbs, told me to take them within the week if I wanted it to look natural. Like a miscarriage." Her hand moved to her stomach instinctively, protectively. "I kept those herbs for 3 days. Just having them there made it feel like I still had control. Like I could choose." "What made you decide not to take them?" "The baby kicked." Nessa's eyes stung with unexpected tears. "First time I'd really felt it. Just this tiny flutter, like a butterfly trapped inside me. And I realized this wasn't about Corin anymore." She looked at Troy through blurred vision. "I felt terrified, but I threw the herbs away anyway. Thought maybe I could figure it out. Maybe love would be enough. And now? I still don't know if love is enough." She wiped at her eyes roughly. "But I'm here. That has to count for something." Troy reached across the chessboard and took her hand. His grip was warm, solid, anchoring. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." "I'm not. You are." His voice was fierce. "You chose to keep a child knowing you'd face exile. You protected that child, even while dying in the snow. You're here, healing, fighting, refusing to give up. That's not cowardice, Nessa. That's courage, in its purest form." Nessa's breath caught. Nobody had ever looked at her the way Troy was looking at her now, like she was someone precious, someone worth believing in. "Tell me about him," Troy said suddenly. "Corin, how did it start?" Nessa hadn't expected that question, hadn't wanted to talk about Corin, about how stupid she'd been. But Troy was watching her with those gold eyes, patient and steady, and somehow the words came anyway. "He was kind to me," she said finally. That was the thing that got me. Not handsome, though he was, but kind. The pack had always treated me like I was defective, but Corin, he acted like I was normal. Like being wolfless didn't matter. She stared at her hands. We met at a pack gathering. I was serving drinks, trying to be invisible, and he actually looked at me, smiled, asked my name. Nobody ever asked my name. How long were you together? 2 years. The words tasted bitter. He'd visit me in secret. Said he didn't want the pack interfering, didn't want them judging us. I thought it was romantic, thought he was protecting our relationship. Didn't realize he was just ashamed of being seen with me. Troy's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I loved him, Nessa continued, and saying it out loud hurt in ways she hadn't expected. Really, genuinely loved him. He said all the right things, did all the right things. Made me feel like I'd finally found someone who saw past the wolfless thing. She laughed, sharp and bitter. When I got pregnant, I was scared, but also happy. Thought maybe this was the thing that would make him finally claim me publicly. Finally stop hiding what we were. But he didn't. No. He told me to get rid of it. Just so casually. Like I was telling him about a broken dish instead of our child. Nessa's voice cracked. When I said no. When I said I wanted to keep the baby. He looked at me like I'd betrayed him. Like I'd done this deliberately to trap him. Her hands fisted in the blankets. He went to the elders that same day. Told them I'd lied about birth control, that I'd tried to force him into mating by getting pregnant. They believed him instantly. And I realized he'd never loved me. I'd just been convenient. Someone to sleep with who couldn't tell anyone because nobody would believe a wolfless woman over a pack wolf. Nessa, I was so stupid. The tears came now, hot and humiliating. Even when he visited in secret, even when he never touched me in public, I made excuses, told myself he was just being cautious. Troy moved from his chair to sit on the edge of her bed, his hand finding hers again. You weren't stupid. You were in love. There's a difference. Is there? His voice was firm. Being in love means you trusted someone. Being stupid means you deserved what happened. You didn't deserve it, Nessa. What Corin did, lying to you, using you, abandoning you when it got inconvenient, that's on him. Not you. But I should have known. How? Troy's eyes blazed. How should you have known? You can't see the future. Can't read minds. You believed what someone told you because that's what decent people do. They give others the benefit of the doubt. The fact that he betrayed that trust says everything about his character, and nothing about yours. Nessa stared at him, something in her chest cracking open. You really believe that? I know it. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. You loved someone who didn't deserve you. That's not your fault. That's his failure, not yours. The tears came harder now, not just for Corin, not just for the betrayal, but for all of it. For the years of being treated as less than. For the desperate hope that had been crushed so thoroughly she'd almost died in the snow. Troy pulled her into his arms, careful of her healing wounds, and let her cry against his chest. His hand stroked through her hair, steady and soothing, while she sobbed out, months of grief and fear and loneliness. I'm sorry, Nessa gasped when she finally got control of herself. I'm getting your shirt wet. I don't care. His arms tightened slightly. Cry as much as you need. I'm not going anywhere. They stayed like that for a long time, Troy holding her while she cried, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, his warmth seeping into her bones. It felt safe in a way nothing had felt safe in months, maybe years. Finally, exhausted, Nessa pulled back. Thank you, she whispered, for listening, for not making me feel pathetic. You're not pathetic. Troy's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a remaining tear. You're hurt. there's a difference. Something in Nessa's chest ached at the gentleness in his touch. This was dangerous. Letting herself lean on him, letting herself want his comfort. Because eventually she'd have to leave, and it would hurt so much worse if she let herself care too deeply. I should let you rest, Troy said finally, though he didn't move. It's late. Stay. The words slipped out before Nessa could stop it. Just a little longer? I don't want to be alone yet. Troy's expression shifted, surprise, then something warmer. All right, a little longer. He settled back into his chair, but kept his hand in hers. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling softly, until Nessa's eyes grew heavy, and she drifted toward sleep. The last thing she remembered was Troy's voice, quiet and gentle. Sleep well, Nessa. I'll keep watch. The next morning, Maren cleared her for short walks around the castle. Just to the gardens and back, the healer warned. Don't overdo it. You're healing well, but you're not invincible. Troy appeared at her door just after breakfast. I heard you were granted parole. Thought you might want a guide. Nessa's heart did that complicated flutter thing again. You don't have to. I'm sure you have important king things to do. The important king things can wait. He offered his arm, formal and courtly. Shall we? The gardens were beautiful, carefully maintained beds of flowers, winding stone paths, benches positioned to catch the morning sun. Nessa walked slowly, one hand on Troy's arm for balance, the other on her stomach where the baby kicked gently against her palm. This is incredible, she breathed, taking in the roses, the lavender, the herbs growing in neat rows. How many gardeners does it take to maintain all this? 4, though we could probably use 6. Troy led her to a bench in the shade. The eastern section is mostly abandoned now. The gardeners can't keep up with everything. Nessa sat carefully, and Troy settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I meant what I said before, Troy said after a moment. About the garden. When you're healed, when the baby comes, if you want space to grow things, it's yours. Why? Nessa turned to look at him. Why are you doing all this? The room, the care, the offer of a garden? You saved my life. That was more than enough. You don't owe me anything else. Troy was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the roses. My father used to say that kindness was weakness, that a good king ruled through fear, not love. He believed in discipline, in punishment, in making examples of anyone who stepped out of line. His jaw tightened. I spent my whole childhood watching him terrorize people, watching servants flinch when he entered a room, watching nobles scramble to agree with whatever he said, terrified of becoming his next target. When he died, I promised myself I'd be different, that I'd rule fairly, that people would respect me, not fear me. He laughed without humor, but then reality set in. Being fair made me look weak. Showing mercy invited challenges. He finally looked at her. So, I became what I had to become. Ruthless. Intimidating. The kind of king people are too afraid to challenge. And it worked. I've had 8 years of relative peace. But I also had 8 years of loneliness. His hand found hers on the bench between them. Then I found you in the snow, and something in me, something I thought my father had beaten out of me, woke up. Because you were dying, and you were still trying to protect your child, still fighting even though you had every reason to give up. That doesn't explain why you keep helping me, Nessa said softly. Doesn't it? Troy's eyes held hers. You remind me that kindness isn't weakness, that caring about someone doesn't make me vulnerable. It makes me human. When I'm with you, I don't have to be the Ice King. I can just be... Troy, Nessa finished. Yes. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Just Troy. A man who's tired of being alone. Nessa's breath caught. This was dangerous territory, admissions that felt too honest, too raw, too real. But she couldn't make herself pull her hand away. I'm scared, she whispered. Scared of letting myself feel this. Whatever this is. I don't know if I can survive being wrong about someone again. Then don't trust me yet. Troy's voice was gentle. Take your time. Heal. Figure out who you are without Corin's shadow hanging over you. I'm not going anywhere. But eventually I'll have to leave, find somewhere permanent, figure out how to support myself and the baby. Or you could stay. The words hung between them, weighted with possibility. As what? Nessa's voice cracked. As someone I care about. Troy turned fully toward her, his expression intense. Nessa, I'm not good at this. But when I'm with you, something in me, something I thought was dead, feels alive again. And I don't want to lose that. I don't know what I can give you, Nessa said honestly. I'm broken in ways I don't even fully understand yet. I'm pregnant with another man's child. I have no status, no pack, no prospects. What kind of future could we possibly have? I don't know. Troy's hand cupped. Her face and Nessa's heart stuttered at the tenderness in the gesture. But I'd like to find out, if you're willing. Nessa wanted to say yes, wanted to lean into this warmth, this Safti, this man who looked at her like she was worth something. But fear held her back, fear of being hurt again, fear of trusting wrong, fear of losing herself in someone else's expectations. Can I think about it? She whispered. Take all the time you need. Troy's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I'll be here. The next few days were strange. Troy still came every evening, but something had shifted between them. The air felt charged, electric, full of things neither of them quite knew how to say. They still played chess, still talked. But underneath it all was the awareness of Troy's confession, of the possibility hanging between them like a held breath. Nessa spent her days walking the gardens, thinking about what she wanted, what she could handle. She thought about Corin, about the way he'd made her feel special in private, but ashamed in public. And she thought about Troy, about the way he'd carried her through the snow when he had no obligation to help her, about his evening visits, his patience, his willingness to just sit with her while she healed. About the softness in his eyes when he looked at her, like she was something precious instead of something broken. They were nothing alike. And maybe that was the point. On the 5th day after Troy's confession, Nessa was in the gardens when she heard voices from the courtyard. Angry voices. One of them horribly, painfully familiar. She turned the corner and froze. Corin stood in the courtyard, arguing with 2 guards. He looked different than she remembered, harder, with lines around his mouth that spoke of bitterness and entitlement. But his eyes were the same, cold, calculating. I have a right to see her, Corin was saying, his voice carrying across the stone. That's my child she's carrying. My blood. You can't keep me from... Corin's eyes narrowed. Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect, but surely you understand. That baby is mine. I have a responsibility. You have nothing. Troy descended the steps with predatory grace. You abandoned her. Whatever rights you think you have, you forfeited them when you left a pregnant woman to die in the snow. Nessa's breath caught. She just stood frozen, watching the confrontation unfold. That's not what happened, Corin said smoothly. There was a misunderstanding. The elders made a decision I didn't agree with. I tried to stop them. You're lying. Troy's voice was deadly quiet. I've heard the truth from Nessa herself. How you told her to get rid of the baby. How you went to the elders when she refused. How you watched while they exiled her. Corin's mask slipped slightly. She's wolfless. Defective. The pack had rules. Get out! Troy's alpha command rolled through the courtyard with enough force that even Nessa felt her knees weaken. Get out of my territory before I decide you're a threat that needs eliminating. You're making a mistake, Corin's voice turned cold. That child is pack blood. When it's born, the elders will expect the child will be protected. By me. Under my law. Troy moved closer and Corin actually stepped back. If you or anyone from your pack tries to claim that child, tries to threaten Nessa in any way, I will consider it an act of war. Do you understand? Silence. Then Corin laughed, sharp and bitter. So that's how it is. The Ice King has a new pet. Tell me, does she warm your bed as well as she warmed mine? Or is the pregnant belly too much for even your tastes? Troy moved so fast Nessa barely saw it. One moment he was standing at a distance, the next his hand was around Corin's throat, lifting him off the ground. Say one more word about her, Troy growled, his eyes blazing gold, and I will rip out your tongue. Are we clear? Corin clawed at Troy's arm, his face turning purple. Finally, Troy dropped him. Corin collapsed to the cobblestones, gasping. Leave, Troy said softly. And don't come back. The guards dragged Corin toward the gates. But before they reached it, he looked back, his eyes scanning the courtyard. They landed on Nessa, still frozen in the garden entrance. This isn't over, Corin said, his voice rough from Troy's grip. That baby is mine, and I will have what's mine. Then the guards hauled him through the gates, and he was gone. Nessa stood trembling, her hand pressed against her stomach where the baby was kicking frantically, responding to her fear. She should feel relieved that Corin was gone. Instead, she felt terrified. Nessa, Troy was suddenly in front of her, his hands on her shoulders. Are you all right? She couldn't speak, could only stare at the place where Corin had disappeared. He can't hurt you, Troy said firmly. I won't let him near you, either of you. Do you understand? He said, Nessa's voice cracked. He said it's not over, that he'll take the baby. He'll try and fail. Troy's hands moved to cup her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. I meant what I said out there. By my law, any threat against your child is a threat against the crown. Corin can't touch you without starting a war. But what if... No, what ifs. Troy's thumbs brushed across her cheeks, catching tears she hadn't realized were falling. You're safe here. The baby's safe. I promise you that. I'm scared, she whispered. Scared of trusting this. Scared of believing someone could actually want me. Scared that I'm going to wake up and find out this was all just another lie. It's not a lie. Troy pulled her closer, and Nessa let herself lean into his warmth. I know you're scared, but, Nessa, I'm not him. I'm not going to promise you forever and then abandon you when it gets hard. I'm not going to make you feel like you're something to be ashamed of. His arms wrapped around her carefully, mindful of her still healing wounds. I'm asking you to stay, not because you have nowhere else to go, not because I pity you, but because when I wake up, the first thing I think about is whether you slept well. When I'm in council meetings, I'm wondering if you're eating enough. When I see something beautiful, I want to show it to you. Nessa's eyes burned. Troy, you don't have to answer now, he said softly. Take your time. But know that I'm choosing you, Nessa. However complicated, however messy, however scared you are, I'm choosing you. And in that moment, standing in his arms with the afternoon sun warm on her skin and the baby kicking gently beneath her heart, Nessa felt something crack open inside her. Something that had been locked tight since Corin's betrayal. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, beautiful hope. She pulled back just enough to look at Troy's face. At the scar cutting through his eyebrow, at the gold eyes that watched her with such careful intensity, at the mouth that had smiled more in the last few weeks than it probably had in years. "I don't know how to trust again," she said honestly. "Then let me show you." Troy's hand moved to rest over hers on her stomach, over the place where the baby kicked. One day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just stay. Give this a chance. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll stay." Troy's smile was slow and genuine, and utterly transforming. He pulled her close again, his forehead resting against hers. "Thank you," he murmured, "for giving this a chance." They stood like that for a long moment, Troy's arms around her, the baby moving between them, the promise of possibility hanging in the air like a held breath. Nessa didn't know what the future would bring. Didn't know if Corin would return, if the court would accept her, if she and Troy could really build something real from this strange beginning. But for the first time in months, she wanted to find out. For the first time since Corin's betrayal, she was choosing hope over fear. And as Troy pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead and led her back toward the castle, Nessa let herself believe that, and maybe, just maybe, she deserved a second chance at happiness, even if it came in the most unexpected of forms. Thank you so much for listening. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. And if you enjoyed my story, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.